My name is Shawn Jones, and I'm the CEO of the iNetrepreneur Network. And today I have with me an individual who helps people solve all of their real estate needs through answering questions, providing education, and consulting them to be personal investors in real estate. I have with me owner, founder, speaker, author, Stuart Gethner of Stuart Gethner Education and Consulting. Stuart, welcome.
Great to be here, Shawn. Thanks for having me.
So, Stuart, I'm going to dive right into this interview with you. You work with individuals that are looking to get into real estate, or maybe they've been dabbling in real estate and they're really wanting to, what I call, up their game. But when you talk about real estate and investing, there's a lot of myths, there's a lot of unknowns. And so for someone who is looking at getting into in real estate investing, share with us how you work with your clients.
Well, so the primary goal of what we try to do here at Gethner Education and Consulting is educate people on how to create additional streams of income through investing in real estate. And so everyone's seen the TV shows, the fix and flips, and those hour-long, and about 50 minutes into it, there's this big crisis. Oh my gosh, we didn't know there was a big rock under the sink or whatever. And then by the time the show's over, they're holding up their $40,000 check and, oh, thank goodness we made money. So that's everything solved in an hour in those shows. But really, if you want to create long-term wealth, from what we've experienced, investing in fixed assets like real estate is not get rich quick, but it's get rich slow, and it works every time. So we work with people to educate them on how that works, whether they have no money or whether they have capital to invest. So we come from an education standpoint as opposed from a sales and marketing standpoint. Does that make sense, Shawn?
It does. And with that, you've been able to also incorporate your consulting side. So once you've provided your clients with the education, where do you take it from there?
So from a consulting standpoint, I learned from one of my mentors that the most expensive client is a one-time client. And so I help people not just start, but scale their business. I have one of my clients, his name is Jay. Let's call him Jay because that's his name. And he has scaled his wholesale business. He's doing about $40,000 a month. I helped a Willie. He has this vision of putting together an upscale RV park in Florence Junction. So I guess a lot of the RV parks are for the older RVs. They're only 30 amp service, but kind of narrow. They're not as tall. But these new and improved, especially since the pandemic RVs, are bigger, wider, stronger. So he needed to raise $12.5 million to start building that dream, look for the architectural plans through construction and such. So I helped him raise that capital. So from start to finish, start to scale, I'm involved in those processes, working hand in hand, shoulder by shoulder, to making sure that we create a success story.
That's incredible. And you talked about getting the funding, helping raise the funds. Can you dive a little bit more into that? Is it bringing other investors? Where do you typically send someone to find the capital for these large properties, for these large investment opportunities?
Sure. So you don't have to have a lot of money. And I think that's one of the things we all learned as a kid. You have to have money to make money. I helped this gentleman, Albert, raised about $3.5 million. He had $0. He was able to pay me, but he actually had $0 to put into the transaction to buy a 74-unit apartment complex down in Tucson. So if you go back on your calendar about maybe 10, 12 years ago, 2008, 2009, you could buy property on the courthouse steps pretty much in any city or county across America for maybe 30, 40, 50 cents on the dollar. The challenge is no one had money. You fast forward to today's marketplace, sometimes finding these deals are a little harder, but there's a lot of cash on the sidelines. And so people are looking for opportunities. If you put your money in the bank or buy a CD or government bond, they're paying 0 point nothing. So if you really want to at least hedge inflation or create additional cash flow, positive cash flow, in our opinion, local real estate areas that you can actually drive by and touch and say, hey, I own a piece of that, or I'm a part of that. That is really where long-term wealth is created.
I love that. And Stuart, with with what you do and you offer, and I know that you're also a trainer for the iNetrepreneur Real Estate Academy, and you teach individuals on a weekly basis. It's not sales based; it's truly education. You talk on so many different topics. I mean, even down to insurance and how to get appraisers to come in. I mean, all those little nuances that are needed to complete real estate transactions. What are some, if somebody were to come to your class or to come to you privately, what are like the top things that you say before you go into real estate and investing? These are some things you need to consider.
Well, that's a great question. And I'm reminded, there's this great business philosopher. I don't know if you ever heard of him. His name is Jim Rohn. And he said that he has this story that he tells about Jesus. And I'm not very religious. This is religious, but he had a great story. The story was when Jesus would speak and he rose from the dead, about a third of the people completely believed and followed him. About a third of the people wanted nothing to do with him, turned and walked away. And about a third of the people were confused. And he stands up there and he says, "Do you want to know why they were confused?" And there's this long pause, and the audience is like, "Yeah, like, why were they confused?" And his answer is, "I have no idea why they were confused, but they were confused. Let's just call them the confused ones." So when you're confused, a confused mind does nothing. So the first thing you want to do is create clarity of what you're trying to accomplish. And in real estate, there's so many different ways you can make money. I remember when I was a kid growing up in Chicago and we'd go to Cub games. There was, back in those days, there were fields in the neighborhoods and there was never any parking. And people would charge you to allow you to park your car on their lawn. That's how creative they were to create extra money through real estate. There's development, there's wholesaling, there's so many different ways. We focus on to start with, what are you trying to accomplish and what are your resources? And whether or not you know investors, whether or not you know property, whether or not you have those resources, that's what I'm for. And I'm here to tell you that most investors, they don't really care about you as much as they care about the deal. So if you find a good investment property, which will help you find, then we package it and we present it to a plethora of investors. And those that are interested, they'll come forward. So from a real estate perspective, the first thing we want to create is clarity. The last thing we want is confusion. And we want to make sure that we have our eye on the target and we don't get sidetracked or any knee-jerk reactions. We want to stay focused on the end goal. Because, first time you rode a bike, I don't know when the last time you rode a bike was, but the first time you got on a bicycle and they took the training wheels off, you probably fell. And so if you just quit right then and there, you'd never learn how to ride a bike. But if I brought you to my office right now and we brought a bicycle out in the parking lot and I said, "Here, Sean, ride the bike," you might get on it and wobble for maybe a few seconds, but in a few minutes, you're riding up and down the parking lot, riding that bike. The point being is that once you learn a skill, once you have the skill, once you have knowledge, I can't take that away from you. And so we've been investing in real estate since 1987, but you take a look at the top Forbes 400 and how people have made real wealth in this country, it's all been through real estate. And it's not rocket science. Everybody starts somewhere. They say the two best times to invest in real estate was 20 years ago, and the second best time is to invest is today.
You mentioned early on the shows that are the traditional fix and flip and everything gets solved in an hour. One of the questions I tend to run across is someone saying, okay, now that I'm looking at getting into fixing and flipping on an average, and obviously each transaction has so many intricacies that it can vary, but on an average, if somebody wants to fix and flip an average size property, not in bad distress, maybe needs some landscaping, paint, put the lipstick on the property, what would be a typical time from the date of purchase to the time of flip in an average market, not what we're in right now?
Sure. So don't worry. So that's a great question. And what people tend to forget is most loans, when you're flipping a property, you're selling it to a homeowner, usually someone with a family, wife, kids, whatever that looks like, and a couple pets. And so most loans are funded by FHA. And FHA has a 90-day flip rule. So FHA won't fund a loan, especially on a flip, until it's been 90 days. And that rule came from back in '05, '06, '07, when we were turning property over before you could even finish it. You were marking it up 10, 20 grand, and that set the pace for the neighborhood. And the next person marked it up 10, 20 grand, and that ceiling kept on getting higher and higher, and then the bottom dropped out. So for your typical transaction, it's going to be about 90 days. And so we're looking at a typical profit. I know you didn't ask that, but I'll throw that on the table as well. Nothing less than 20, 25 grand, to be honest with you. The more detailed, the more intense it is. I know you said just, lipstick, landscaping, maybe some flooring. But if you have mold, if you need a new AC, then your profit margins are probably going to be in the 40 to 60 grand range. And those are legitimate numbers.
Okay. So Stuart, if somebody would like to, what I call pick your brain, learn more from you through your education and consulting services, how can somebody reach you?
Well, first of all, I'd be honored to chat with anybody. So I think that the biggest fear is people get concerned that, again, they don't have the money, they don't have the resources, they don't know where to begin. And so they become embarrassed. And they become embarrassed and they analyze the situation. And I'm sure you've heard the expression, they get analyzed till they're paralyzed. And before you know it, another year has gone by and we're in the same situation. So I offer everyone an opportunity, if you want to sit down with me. I call it a 30-minute momentum session. And I guarantee that when we're done, that you'll leave with a plan that will work for you. No charge, no charge. I've learned through going to various seminars myself, and especially I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, that if you educate people, if you just educate them and you don't have to sell them or pitch, there's a percentage of people that'll take that education and they'll go out there and they'll do something with it. And then there's a percentage of those people, they'll take that education and they'll do nothing with it. They'll decide it's just not for them. And that's fine. And then there's a percentage of people that are going to want some more help or assistance. And that's where I fit in if you're looking for some more help or assistance. So I'll give you my email address. I'll throw up my website and my phone number. And if you feel like you'd like to have a quick conversation or sit down for a 30-minute momentum session, I'd be honored to help you. So my phone number is pretty simple to remember. 480 is my area code, 443-4500. That's 480-443-4500. My website's pretty easy. Contact Stuart, and Stuart is Stuart, but if you spell it the wrong way, Stewart, it comes to me anyway. ContactStuart.com, and my email address is my name, Stuart@Gethner.com. Getner, Stuart@Gethner.com. And again, everybody's got to start somewhere. It's like riding that bike. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you want to learn how to ride a bike, you can probably learn how to do that, get that knowledge. And again, once you have that knowledge, you're able to take it with you for the rest of your life, regardless of the marketplace. In the old days, we would have black appliances, and they're stainless steel appliances, and their countertops are quartz, and then they're granite, then they're from those things change, but the concepts never change. And so once we have that opportunity to sit down and get educated, I promise you'll be well on your way.
Wonderful. Stuart, I want to thank you so much for taking time to be here and share your knowledge and experience with the world.
Thanks for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, we just had Stuart Gethner, owner of Stuart Gethner Education and Consulting. He is one of our panel speakers at our upcoming Art of Connection Global Summit on September 21st. You too can hear more from Stuart, experience his hands-on workshops that he'll be hosting during the event. You can visit the event site at artofconnectionsummit.com.